I'd like to welcome you to the Unmasked Relationship Factor Series. I am AliNICOLE WOW, also known as Majesty, and most of you are familiar with me being in the masked Majesty mode, but I am unmasked for this series. And I'm excited today because I am joined by one of my great friends and favorite colleagues who's also one of my celebrity-preneurs, and we work in a lot of different capacities together. I'm actually the vice president of one of his companies as well, and there's going to be information below in the description about that. I want to welcome King Rob Deptford.
Hey, thanks. As it turns out, I'm unmasked too. So,
Yes, very much so. Yes. And I'm so grateful, to have you here. I wanted you to be a part of this series because I thought it was very important because as it relates to different relationship dynamics, which is what we cover here within this series, just different levels. And I know whether it's family or work related relationships, you happen to be someone who's pretty solid, an extremely likable person, that that a lot of people actually love and enjoy, being around. But
unless people aren't telling me something,
oh yeah, no, 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 trust me. They would let you know. But with that being said, even the greatest people within relationships, we know that there are different dynamics. And so within these particular segments, I never have anything planned, so to speak. It's just whatever comes up in the moment of discussion that we can provide a sense of empowerment for people and maybe shine the light on a few areas too, in terms of things that need to be unmasked. So you ready to get started? See where this
sure.
goes today?
Yeah, let's have at her and see what happens.
Yes. Well, thank you again for being here. So before I can dive in and probably start talking about a million things, is there anything particular that you believe is not commonly covered as it relates to relationships? Or what do you see some things that you believe shifted?
I think we just have this pressure in society these days to make everything work, and I think that there is sometimes a belief that it's tough to make it all work, right? Like you
Yeah,
have to devote your time to your career, you have to devote your time to your family and your relationships, but there's still only 24 hours in a day.
right.
And so that is a lot of pressure to be successful in all aspects of what you do.
Mhm.
And really, I think that it's easy to think it's impossible, that we have to sacrifice something in order to be successful in something else. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think people spend a lot of time just making assumptions like that,
Right.
rather than looking at possible solutions.
You're absolutely right. I love that you went there because that is so true, is when we are sort of fed and conditioned to believe that you actually can't have a holistic, successful relationship dynamics and being able to blend life and career and recreation all together. We're kind of fed this illusion that, yeah, it is tough to make it work. And like you said, when the mindset or the conditioning is focused upon that type of dynamics, then we aren't really solution oriented at all. It's more already entering this as a problem. Oh, it's going to be tough. And yes, I'm going to have to make this sacrifice to do X, Y, and Z. And you're right. That's not necessarily the case at all.
Yeah, I think it's true, and I think we see examples of it, and that sort of reinforces these ideas. I remember working with a colleague who, that was younger and had was married, and they wanted children, but his wife was on track to enter some senior management level role in her
Mhm.
career, and they were making a deliberate choice not to have children so she could focus on her career, which that's fine,
Right.
do what works for you. But I just thought, that's really unfortunate that they feel like they have to not have children at this time in
Right.
order to make the career thing work. And I think there are other choices, there are other ways to do things.
You're right. Yeah. So, let's talk about possibly some uncommon alternatives, maybe to those types of scenarios. Because you're right, because people can hear this and say, well, what are the solutions? Because if the career is demanding her or whomever to be in the position a certain way, then where would there be the time in terms of being able to have children? And but if we can possibly show some alternatives, then maybe that can give people a different perspective. So you want to go for that?
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, I think that, certainly there's a lot of pressure on women in the workplace. We can't deny that.
Right.
And there's been a disparity there for generations. So, that's getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do. But I think, looking at the organization that you work for, or, maybe you work for yourself, whatever it is you do, are you in the right place where you can make things work and prioritize what you truly want? And
Right.
if you
Yes.
truly want a career and you truly don't want children, then terrific, follow that path.
Right, right, right.
But if you want something different, then we have to think about, well, how can I get that? Right.
Right. So you don't live a life of regrets because um, going back to what you were mentioning, that example is that even though one spouse could say, okay, well, we'll pause on this or we just won't consider this because she's pursuing this, but it doesn't mean that deep down inside that the other spouse is not kind of tormented by that, especially if that's something that they wanted and desired.
Yeah.
And we'll look back, okay, well, you go after this career which has no guarantee to last and has no guarantee that you're going to always enjoy that. Will you sacrifice being able to co-create and have children in order to try to fulfill this, that later on you it may not even be the thing that you most really wanted, but you put time off to pursue that and not have the children? Will you have regrets later? And so I think that that's something people have to really look at and examine, because those are the different things that actually break relationships down as well, especially if another person wanted that, or prior to the marriage did they already agree that we were going to have kids. So woo, there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there, and it's disruptive, right?
Absolutely, it is extremely disruptive, right?
Yeah, and not everything works in perfect harmony all the time, as much as
Right.
we'd like to. So we have to be prepared to encounter those obstacles and figure out ways to work around them. And my wife and I have been fortunate to be going as long as we just had our 19-year anniversary. So
Yes, I love that. Yeah,
it,
and congratulations again.
yeah, thanks. And I mean, we have two boys, teenagers now,
Mhm.
and our life is busy. They play hockey and they're at school and they're doing their own thing.
Right, right.
Uh, and it feels like sometimes we're just sort of glorified taxi drivers for what they do in life. And it's full. Our lives are full.
Mhm.
But we find ways to make it work, and it's not always easy. And I think you don't get through 19 years like we have without having a few bumps in the road. And,
Oh,
and
for sure, for sure.
um, so we have to be prepared for that, and not always having that perfect harmony, as I say, like people dream about. I think
Yeah, right.
it
I was
doesn't
thinking
always
about
work
the
like it
World of
does on
Coke song,
TV.
Yeah. And it's important that you said that because the best of the best of relationships will have contrast, and contrast is necessary for growth, just like rain is necessary for, growth of the plants and different things. A lot of people don't really like, the rainy, seasons and things that happen, but we do have to have rain in order to appreciate the sunshine, but also realize that they work together. You really can't have one without the other if you're going to actually have, if you want to call it the perfect balance or perfect harmony. So it's the same with relationships, that, like you mentioned, you don't get through 19 years of, with just smooth harmony in all areas. There's often sometimes some things that may clash or challenges that you have to work through, but that's what really makes relationships worthwhile, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The hard times are bound to happen anyway.
Right.
And you know, I think there have been times where we think to ourselves, gee, would it be different, or would it be better if something had happened differently? But in hindsight now, looking back at coming through some of the more challenging things,
Mhm.
you know, the answer is an easy no. Like you get
Right, right.
the reward in the end is you continue on with that, you know, that you get back to that sort of happy, harmonious place. And
Right,
you
right,
continue,
right.
you know, you continue with the ups and downs for
Yes, the
sure. But
roller coaster of love for sure. You
yeah,
know,
you know the next thing is coming at some point, but you just get better at working through. So
right, right. Yeah, definitely navigating and mastering the different dynamics because as you mentioned, they're going to be there. And anyone who has false expectations that you're just going to have, this perfect match made in heaven all the time, no matter what the dynamics are, whether it's spouse relationships, dating, with your kids, or work related, relationships, they're going to be there, for sure. Except for in a perfect world where you and I exist as colleagues, there's not going to be any of those challenges, right?
right. Yeah, well, I mean, the workplace stuff is a whole other
Yeah,
ball
right.
game too, right? That's sure. I mean, ups and downs are going to happen in work relationships too,
Right,
and
right. No,
disagreements.
no, not here. No,
Yeah,
no,
not here,
that
right,
is
not here.
definitely no.
But I mean,
No.
there's good in that, right?
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
good in those disagreements at times,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
they
Yes.
result in debate, and if it's healthy debate, usually there's a positive that comes out of that. So
Right, right, right. There is. And the appreciation of differences that
for
really
sure.
complement each other and everything. But yeah, but I'm just playing around here.
I
But
know,
the
I know.
serious is I think that we've had so far definitely a really great colleague relationship and work relationship dynamics, and consider each other to be friends as well, so I'm sure I probably get on your nerves here and there, but you just don't address it, which is smart. No, I'm
Well,
just kidding.
and you know, I'm sure it goes both ways, but
No,
it's
not at
nice to
all.
be, well, I mean, it's nice to be able to, I think you have to be in a position where you can say no to the other person sometimes, right? Like,
Oh,
no, this
right,
doesn't
right,
work.
right. Oh
And then
yeah.
the other person has to be in a position to receive that and say, okay, well, you know, this is feedback that I need to take into consideration,
Right, right, right.
and continue to
Absolutely.
move forward, making this work. But you know, what can we do differently to make it come together and get back to kind of productivity, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And that's really, really important. Because I do believe that a lot of times people disillusion themselves with believing that things are just always going to be harmonious.
yeah,
And it's just not really meant to be that way. And it doesn't mean that things have to be chaotic by any means. Um,
yeah,
but it doesn't mean that things are always going to just go smoothly. But believe it or not, in a lot of different relationship dynamics, especially close knitted relationship dynamics, with a lot of people I've worked with, we actually have had very solid relationships where there were really little to no um, issues, and I think it
yeah,
is just because there's open communication, and there is the appreciation for each other. And most of the time when everybody's kind of staying in their own lanes but then joining those lanes at the same time, it's much like an orchestra, in a sense, a symphony orchestra, where the chief conductor is the alignment and everyone is playing their part. So when we are in concert together, so to speak, things actually are going, pretty smoothly. um,
sure,
and no one's breaking off into some random solo that we didn't plan for, that
sure.
could kind of mess it up. So there are the dynamics where things actually let's say 99.9% of the time actually are flowing a certain way, but
Yeah.
there will be kind of the 1% in terms of, I don't necessarily want to say challenges. I just think that it's just, I mean, it's just a natural progression, because whether you're practicing with people or you're doing things, everything's not always going to just come out perfect, but the perfection is just in, I believe, the process, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, we have not unique circumstances, but maybe a little less common in that
Mhm.
we get to choose who we work with.
Right. Yes, we
And
do.
I
Yes.
think about my wife who works in healthcare. You know, she sees hundreds of people sometimes if it's in a hospital setting or something like that. And there are people she enjoys working with, and there are people she would like to never see again.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Of course.
And,
Right.
and this is probably what is more normal for people, and to navigate that kind of environment and to be able to work with all personalities when you have to work with all personalities and figure out how to do that. That's you know, that's a skill,
Yes, it is a skill.
and it's one of those things that I do. Again, I think you get better at it with time, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you have to be open to it, and rather than just sort of brush it off and be angry about it, you have to be open to getting through that
Yes, right,
challenge, and
right.
getting on to the good times
There
again.
you go. Right, exactly. It's just really one all big tapestry of different dynamics that just make, I believe, the experience just worthwhile. I really, and I really keep myself open for those worthwhile moments, because I think that we make them. I think we're responsible for creating those. And in relationships, we have to be intentional, right?
For sure we do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely we do. We have to understand what we want out of it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there has to be a plan to make that happen,
No, you're right. You're right. So
and
let's
actions to make that happen.
absolutely execution of, yes, of them, those actions. You're right, because people make plans all the time, but sometimes they don't actually execute those plans.
Yeah.
And that happens within all different types of relationships, where someone's committed to do this and they've planned to do this particular thing, and then next thing you know, someone could drop the ball or not follow through. So the higher level of accountability, self accountability first, right?
Yeah.
um, and then the accountability of the other parties, yes, to make sure that we all are just staying committed to what we have endeavored to do. um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So these are interesting dynamics. So something I want to go back to really quick, in terms of, we were discussing uncommon alternatives, and something that you brought up that I believe was really important in terms of the examination about what you really want. And when it comes to jobs and careers and different things of that nature, so that people can find creative ways to actually have it all. And you know me, I'm very big on that, because I do
Yeah.
believe that we can actually have the life that we desire to create, but sometimes we do have to be innovative in a very uncommon way, and sometimes go against the norm. And I believe that sometimes when we actually rebel righteously, in terms of not allowing society to paint this template for us, in terms of, here's how a successful relationship should be, here's how your successful life should be, and people actually create exactly what they want. And so if someone does want to have children and they want to have a successful career, then they do have to assess whether the career that they are in at this point, or one that they could potentially be embarking on, is this going to actually work in alignment with the core values and the dreams that, that one has. So I believe that when people can get present and really start to ask themselves those questions, is, what is it that I really want, but also have the mindset that you actually can have that. Now potentially that could look different how it plays out, but don't go in believing that, oh, I just can't have it. I'm going to have to sacrifice somewhere. I'm going to have to, not be able to do this in order to,
Yeah.
have this, so um yeah,
Yeah.
having that healthy examination. So your thoughts again just around that, because you mentioned that. Did you want to expand
Yeah.
on that any?
So some of that I think comes from our examples in life, whether it's parents or relatives or close
Yeah,
friends. And so we sometimes are limited by those examples.
right, right.
And so we have to look beyond our, our current scope, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky, growing up, I had some close friends in the neighborhood who I hung out with all the time. Their parents were entrepreneurs, and they built a $20 million industrial contracting business.
Mm, wow. Mm-hmm.
And yet they were still around home, right? Like
Yeah, right.
their house was like my second home when I was always
Um,
there shooting hoops in the driveway,
yeah.
or
Hmm.
I went on Sunday drives with them on occasion. I
Nice.
was quite close with them. And at the time, I didn't realize what was truly happening. But in hindsight, it's easy to look back now and say, okay, well, these guys built this big business,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they still had family time, and they did the Sunday drives, and
Mm-hmm.
the dad showed up and would shoot hoops in the driveway with us.
Yeah.
And when I remember that, it's easy now to look at that and say, well, how did they make it happen? And that now is with the family situation that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Our two boys, that really is what I wanted out of life.
Right, right, right.
Now, could they have built a $50 million business if they didn't have children, or if they had other things, if they did things differently? Maybe, but they built a $20 million
Right,
business, and they
right.
still had all of the things they wanted in life.
Right. That
Um,
were most important.
that were important to them. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back to that and think, okay, what's important to me? Well, yes, I want the family time. Like, I'm really a family first kind of
Yes,
guy.
you
So
are. You
I want
are.
to have the time with my kids. I want to be at their hockey games. I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
I've done school field trips with them,
Yeah.
things that a lot of dads in particular have not always had
Yeah.
the
Right.
opportunity to do.
Right.
So it really is, again, how can you make that happen? What can you do
Mm-hmm.
differently
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that? And if you're lucky enough to work for another organization that has the flexibility to accommodate that, that's terrific. And I think these days, with more and more remote work, uh,
Right. Right.
those kinds of things, those kinds of opportunities maybe a little bit easier to come by for some people. But I
Right.
know that doesn't work for everyone. So
Right. Yeah,
uh,
it
depending
doesn't.
on depending on the job you do. So then it's, all right, well, I know what I want. Back to the drawing board. How
Exactly.
can I
Right.
how can I
Right.
do
Right.
that?
And you know what? We have to redefine and refine, for sure, the different goals and values as things progress, right? Because
Yeah,
sometimes you want different things at different times. But I believe that the fundamentals of your core values pretty much stay the same, but a lot of
yeah,
times they do expand. And so, like with relationships or anything, there's going to be growth, there's going to be evolution. At least there should be, right? um,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, but it's just important to have what I call your profitable priorities, and I mean that from a holistic perspective. Going back to what you mentioned in terms of the $20 million business versus the 50 million, but what is it that they really want? The currency of life yields to them all of what they would enjoy that's important to them. So that could look like it's having the $20 million business, but then having the holistic profitability in the enjoyment and fulfillment of life versus, okay, maybe if we didn't have children or we sacrificed a little bit more time, we could have the expansion, but that's just not the currency bracket that maybe they, would desire to have. So it's about priorities, and that is profitable priorities because you are having the important elements and aspects of what what you want in life. Yeah, got to be intentional, right?
yeah, and it does come down to the priorities, I think. And
Hmm.
when you're focused on what you want, then it's really down to the strategy. You know, how
Right.
can I get it? What do I want? How would I know if I got what I wanted? Right? Like, what are the markers of that?
Right, right. Yeah,
Uh,
what does that look like, right?
what does that look like? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, you know, what's the action plan? How can I start taking some action steps towards that? And even if it's something small, you know, what
Right,
can I do
right.
today to get this in motion to work towards my priority?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's, you know, there's the escape the 9 to 5 kind of thing, right? And
Oh, definitely. I was gonna
uh,
go there too. And uh,
well, and sometimes you escape the 9 to 5 only to have a 7 to 10 or something, you
right,
know.
exactly. It just kind of rearranges itself, but it doesn't actually pan
It doesn't.
out the way that
No.
you desire. But that goes back to being intentional and really, during these times where there's so much potential in terms of flexibility of how people really can create their lives. And that's
Yeah.
something that, you and I do together and, even how our paths, connected. And so before I go there, I want to talk real quick about going back to being intentional because you and I are going to be doing a training um, that's around being anchored in love and basically it is for life and business, relationships and different dynamics and really being solid and grounded, in those areas because they play such an important part, in all that we do. And that's with intentionality. And, the spinoff of that is that because you and I both have our backgrounds in journalism and broadcasting and media communications and everything. And so, we're used to being anchors of our experiences, so to speak, journalists of our lives and our reporting and broadcasting that, to the public. And so being able to
So long ago, but it feels like
yeah, I
only
know,
yesterday.
right? It is. But the thing about it is that we are constantly doing that.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
say that
The
we have a
skills stay with you.
right. I say that we have a background, meaning of course, our formal training in a sense, we landed ourselves in that place, or as you would say, cut our teeth, within that particular industry and skill sets. But we are constantly doing that in what we do. We're broadcasting now, you know,
Yes.
and sort of being anchors, if you will, even in terms of what we're kind of reporting back, to others in preparation for how they can have better relationships and the things that they need to unmask and just really start to get clear. So in terms of being intentional is that you really do have to be anchored and grounded within what's most important and those priorities because that's what you're actually going to broadcast and communicate to other people. And it's going to reflect back to you how you are treated in relationships based on what you are broadcasting, based on what you're giving out. So that's really important. And so when we talk about what we want, um, today there's so many opportunities to have what you want, especially we're talking about the digital space. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can really create your life and business and career in some very unique ways. So you want to speak to that any before we get ready to, wrap up? That's an intention of being anchored in your, um, in these different dynamics as you expand your relationship with yourself and others.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think there's probably a whole other training we could get into if, if we
Well,
get,
yeah, if we go
but
to them, yeah, which we do have, a training that, we'll make available, to others. But definitely just wanted to hear just kind of a generalization around that.
well,
Before.
you know, I think a lot of people are still taking the digital space for granted and the kind of freedom and flexibility you can build around that. So
Mm.
we're maybe a little more accustomed to it now, post pandemic, let's say,
Yeah,
or
right.
you know, sort of post restrictive pandemic stuff, and having to have gotten into the digital space, sort of forced to use a lot more tools in the digital space.
Hmm.
Maybe a few people have gotten past some of the technophobia and the discomfort that comes with doing things even like this, like you and I are
Right,
doing.
right, right.
So with that, you know, there is, I think, opportunity for expansion of that skill set, and you know, just leveraging the tools that are available online, to be able to start creating some of that additional freedom and flexibility and work towards your goals. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And we have tons of opportunities, for that. And we will definitely have information about that in the description. And this is really important because going back to the relationship dynamics, anytime you can enhance your life and improve your relationships, it's going to benefit you tremendously, but really it's going to benefit the whole of just, your life experience that involves others. And so we know that with different career dynamics that have been shifting, and people do, as Rob was mentioning, want more freedom, want more flexibility, being able to consider having your own business online, that's going to improve your relationship with yourself personally and professionally. But also the internet has made the world so much smaller in terms of we can come together, and believe it or not, a lot of people meet their spouses and different things online, and
Yeah.
it's just a whole lot that takes place. But and we have things to help in all those areas, whether it's relationship, whether it's business, whether it's lifestyle. And we'll have information, as I mentioned below, that you can avail yourself, for that, because this is important. If you want to build your life holistically, you have to first have a good relationship with life itself. And what better way to have a good relationship with life itself than to be engaged in so many different levels that then help to enhance your relationship, with others. You co-sign with that, Rob, or what are your thoughts about that before we wrap?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I would just add that it's not work free, right? Like,
No, no,
uh,
no. Freedom does not mean work free. No, it just
yeah,
it's
it's just making those priorities again. Like, I spent the
absolutely.
whole day yesterday with my family, but then I
Yeah,
worked until 11 o'clock last night. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just kind of making things work for you so that you can get in all of those things that you want to have in life.
That's right. That's the key to end on right there. Really being anchored and being intentional to make things work. you know
Yeah.
and being committed to that, because that's what's important, is when people can make a commitment that no matter what, we're going to make this work
Yeah.
out to the best. Then relationships are going to be yeah, exactly what they need to be. What's interesting that we haven't talked about, um well, it's okay because we actually have touched on it some, but with you and I being communication specialists, the communication aspect, but all of what we've been talking about actually does play into the communications, because couples or work related relationships have to be communicating in terms of what's going to work, what each person wants, and how we come together, to plan for this to work. So that goes back to the making it to the making it work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially when life gets busy, right?
right.
Especially when you're the
Life will
glorified
get
taxi driver
busy.
for the kids.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Right. And life will get busy even when you have kind of the best dynamics in terms of how you've planned your life out a certain way, maybe not to be busy. But there are going to be times where we're going to be in an overproductive mode that's required, different times. And sometimes you have to do that in order to make things work and improve more. When people go on vacation or so, sometimes they have to maybe double up on some things prior to going, so that
Yeah.
does produce a busier time. Or if there's going to be time, like you mentioned, to spend with the family a certain way, then maybe you double up or double down on a few things so that there is that space, but it's still not from a sacrificial lamb type of experience. It's, or dynamics, I should say. It's just that this just shifted. I see I'll do 2 extra hours over here, and then tomorrow um, have more free time. So that's that flexibility.
Yeah. It's really an integration of everything,
It really is. Yeah.
making it work for you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Making it work.
for
Yeah.
everybody else in the family.
Right, right. That is the core theme of this conversation, is making it work. That is. Well, I appreciate you so much being a part of this series, and what you've shared is just tremendously valuable, and you are perfect for um, this conversation for sure, because you are that family guy and you demonstrate it so well, and especially on social media. Anyone who follows you can see how well integrated your life and business dynamics are, and what you share, how you show up, and everything. And I just appreciate your leadership and your example, and of course working with you in so many different levels, because we've done so much together. And as I mentioned, yeah, we co-submit to each other's leadership, and and yeah, it's just been a great working relationship, well, at least to me, I believe so.
Oh yeah, come on now.
That's right. You better.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Be nice. No, I'm just
Yeah. No, it's terrific.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's always nice to do these things.
yeah.
And yeah, hopefully others will benefit.
Absolutely. So, in closing, do you have one wrap up empowerment statement that you would like to provide for everyone?
Maybe Moose does, my dog.
Oh, yeah, the dog.
Did you?
Exactly. Relationships with pets. That's another show.
That's right. This is the reality of working from home
Oh,
now.
absolutely. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
It is, it is. But I think the thing that comes back to mind to me is don't let yourself be limited. We're so I think trapped at times by the examples around us.
Hmm.
And there's so much more if we look beyond our current circle. So
Right.
if you really
Absolutely.
want something more, it's out there.
It really
Just
is.
have to look a little bit more carefully.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was so well put. I can't thank you enough for being here, to share this space and to empower people so that their relationship dynamics, can improve. So thank you, King Rob.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to close out with saying, of course, I co-sign with everything that Rob has stated, and he had the perfect wrap up. And the core theme has really been about making it work. So that's the parting empowerment for you, is to do what it takes to make it work and to improve and enhance your relationship with life itself, yourself, and others. You're going to tremendously benefit on levels that are just unimaginable for sure. So we are signing off for now, and be back with you to unmask more to help you improve your overall life and well-being in the relationship dynamics. Take care and stay blessed.